Welcome to Empower Her Radio, the space for powerhouse women ready to step into their next level of abundance, purpose, and personal freedom. I'm Dr. Corey Winn, a high performance coach, doctor of physical therapy, philanthropist, and business consultant. I help ambitious women align with their highest calling, expand their wealth and impact, and create a life that feels as good as it looks. If you're a high achieving woman who's built success yet finds yourself craving more alignment, more purpose, more ease, you're in the right place. Here, we bridge the gap between ambition and fulfillment. Through transformative conversations and proven strategies, you'll gain the courage to step into the fullest expression of you. Build a powerhouse business that aligns with your expertise and divine gifts, and lead your life, both personally and professionally, with unshakable confidence, worthiness, and compassion. This is about expansion, legacy, and owning your power unapologetically. You already have everything inside of you to create a life of unlimited possibility. It's time to unlock it. Welcome to your next level. Let's dive in. I am so excited to have Christiane Schroeter on for today. She is a business and wellness coach with a passion for helping women boost their health, confidence, and impact. She's also a professor with a PhD in health economics, an award-winning researcher, and the host of the globally ranked Happy Healthy Hustle podcast. But as always, before we dive into her expert strategies for overcoming procrastination, managing stress, and embracing powerful micro habits, what I like to call the sacred structure, we're going to start with a story behind the success. Because every empowered woman I know didn't arrive at her calling. She journeyed into it. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for this beautiful introduction. And I really love that word, journeyed into it. That sounds like a perfect transition.
So tell us, how did you get where you are today?
Well, as you might have heard from my accent as I started speaking, I'm actually born in Germany and now live in beautiful California, right between Los Angeles and San Francisco. So we have a lot of sunshine here, and it's quite amazing to work at an amazing university and to live in a beautiful place. Not that Germany was not a perfect place or a beautiful place. It just was, maybe the culture wasn't quite what I consider my happy nest, or where I maybe really felt like at home. Because for me, it's a lot about feeling at home, especially as women, to get that inside confidence that you really show on the outside. And when I came to the United States for my PhD, I actually felt like that was the culture I'm thriving in and that I'm succeeding in. And so in my coaching, I combine a lot of that German structure in the organization and that kind of strategic thinking with the American, more bubble or forward oriented thinking culture. And I think that was my journey, that I really learned that sometimes environmental changes really lead to you stepping into your own superpower, into your unique self, and becoming more comfortable with who you are.
Absolutely. And we're so glad to have you in the US now.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's amazing. And I'm always happy to share things about Germany, but then I always tell people, keep in mind though, I chose to live in California. So I just want to put that in perspective, right?
What made you take the leap from Germany to the US to get your PhD?
Yeah, so my trademark coaching is called Petite practice. And that is essentially a small step to get started in building habits and building your routines, right? So a petite practice, a small step.
Right.
I'm super passionate about France and French culture.
Yes.
And when I went to school, the state where I grew up in Germany bordered France.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Paris every year for spring break. I have a family there that I call my French family.
Mm-hmm.
And the two daughters of the family, the older daughter is my age. She actually has the first name that I gave my daughter now, and her sister has the name that I gave my other daughter. So you can see how little things, little petite practices impact our lives.
Yes.
So I'm super passionate about languages, about becoming more comfortable with other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was really that I was always interested in learning from others and interacting with others, in really seeing how it's done in other places, and then bringing that into my own routine and taking a little bit from this and that. So when I went to France, I realized I love being in other places, living in other places. So why don't I also look at England or the United States, English-speaking countries? I even looked at Spanish-speaking countries because I also speak Spanish. And I think that's really how it got started, that I felt like I want to finish my education somewhere where I don't necessarily speak my first language, German, but maybe I speak a different language to kind of challenge me a little bit more in a right side of my brain, left side of my brain situation.
Mhm. Well, and I grew up with my father's obviously American, but he was self-taught French. So I grew up with him going to French groups, and now he speaks Spanish, but I grew up in a place of really being totally fascinated with cultures that were different from mine. And, I wish as a child I had listened to him, or I might actually be fluent in French, but I'm not. But same, now that you're in the States, I think back to how easily it is to travel throughout Europe and be in a different country in a couple of hours. So I'm sure you bring all of those cultures that you saw and were a part of here. How do you kind of connect all of that in with your coaching? I know you mentioned the German structure with the American progressive thought, but is there anything specific that you kind of keep and teach with your clients?
Yeah, so one thing, because I am a marketing professor and I teach innovation entrepreneurship, at the end of the day, marketing, branding, innovation entrepreneurship always comes back to value. What value do you offer to the world? And you will only sell a product when you share your own story.
Right,
Sometimes people don't even know what their story really is. And then I say, well, what is it that you struggle with or struggled with? And what helped you overcome that struggle? That's your story, right? Your story of transformation. We all are always amazed by looking at athletes or celebrities. But then the really interesting thing is like looking to how did they get where they are right now?
right.
And so you might not become a celebrity or a star athlete, but by sharing how did you get to where you are right now, that's really where the magic is. And I
Yeah,
think that I share frequently in my coaching, in my books, but also, my podcast, in my teaching, of course, that little situations, how they shaped me, who I am today. And we don't even have to go to a different country in
right.
really digging down into our roots and finding those stories, because they're really who you are today. Is just this beautiful portfolio of all these experiences. And I think that my clients sometimes forget how important that is, to really think about your upbringing, your past, and all these little experiences.
Well, and just to take a second too, how many of your clients don't recognize their value to begin
Mhm.
with? You
Yeah.
mentioned not knowing the story that they had to tell, but how many of us have second guessed that our story is powerful?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that the frequently, and I actually just work with two clients right now that are preparing for a very high value competition, in an entrepreneurship competition, to really position themselves and their products. That sometimes people are afraid, and they're both female actually, and sharing the story and thinking that it's something nobody is really interested in, or putting themselves out there, and then sharing like pictures where you maybe didn't feel your best,
Mhm.
etc. And I always say, well, at the end of the day, you need to be comfortable, of course, with what you share. And there's a thing that, is called oversharing. Don't share everything, but
Right?
kind of like think about a little Venn diagram, and maybe choose like 3 areas about yourself that you want to share, and everything else you don't have to share that. But
Mhm.
if you feel like you can share maybe some health struggles that you overcame, there will be other people who have those same health struggles, and so by sharing, you're not putting yourself out there like in a preachy way, but you're more saying, well, look, this is what helped me. You actually can help others. So this is where the powerful message comes in. You don't have to find a story. The story is already there. You just
Right.
have to figure out really what part of my story do I feel comfortable in sharing that could help somebody else? That's really what the entrepreneurship piece is. We help others, and by helping others, we're helping ourselves.
Well, and just sitting there and talking about your story allows you to show people how you can serve them. You
Mhm.
know, and as entrepreneurs in sales and all the things, there's so many opportunities for you to either be of service or to be transactional and going after people. And everything that you said is just so much of this is who I was, this is how I can help you. I'm open if you're open.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, I think that that's really where the magic is. That if you look at successful companies, and I always tell my students too, look at the packaging, sometimes on the side of a packaging, right? Not the front of the packaging, but maybe on the side of the packaging, there's like about us or our story. And we read this. We are drawn to this. We always root for the underdog. We always want to know, like, oh my gosh, that person really did something to come up to this company right there. And that's really what we connect with. We don't buy a product, we don't buy a service. We really buy the story behind it because we feel that we want to be part of that story of something bigger because we associate with it as well. And I think that is when that happens, that switch, then you're really going to see or going to create beautiful results because you're not as worried about numbers, but you
Mhm.
more start to think, all right, in service of what? What am I doing? When my clients look at me, they will always think, what is it in for me? And so
Mhm.
you don't just talk about you, but you rather talk about, all right, how can I help my clients right here?
Right. Well, and I do believe too, deep down, we want to make an impact, whether
Mhm.
that's personally by nonprofits or work that we are doing to serve others or by our purchases. And I love what you said there because so often we don't know the stories behind the services or the products that we're looking into. And so me personally, I look for that. When you think about what you teach your students in marketing, what are kind of the top three things that you always make sure that they know?
Yeah. That I always, and in coming back to that storyline, I always tell the students when I give you a product to work with in the classroom, I want to know how did that company come up with the name? Like
Okay.
for instance, if I work a lot with food products and with food companies. Let's say there's a granola and the granola has a first name. Is that the first name of the daughter, of the wife, of the grandmother? I want to know what's the story behind that granola because they were just like, Anna sounds like a good name. That's not really like how it goes. They're not like a bunch of guys sitting around the table like, well, Sarah is kind of having a good ring to it. This is not how it works. They're going to be like, well, there was my grandmother and her name was Anna, and she would make this granola. And every day when I came from school, and I had a really crappy day, I would eat a granola, and it was something that really helped me.
Mhm.
That's where the magic happens.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
In
So that's the number one. What's number two?
general, I tell my students that they need to look at companies as something as a potential entry at network. So I this is the number one sentence I hear from them all the time. Well, it's already been done before, especially in my entrepreneurship class. I tell them, "Well, come up with something," right? And they're like, "I want to make an ice cream, but everybody's already making ice cream." It's like, yeah, good. So what? Nobody makes it like you would, right? It
Mhm.
doesn't mean just because we have a Coca-Cola and a Pepsi in the market that there's no room for new soft drinks, because otherwise we wouldn't have seen La Croix and Poppy get into this market, which was
Oh yeah.
exceptionally saturated.
Oh
So
yeah.
don't think of this as being like it's been there, it's done before, because it's not been done and created like you would. So the number two things I tell them is you need to look at all these companies that are out there as being something that are future collaborators. They're
Hmm.
not competing with you. They're not taking anything from you. They can't because they can't take away who you are. But you
Right.
rather need to look and reach out to them and ask them questions. How did you get started? Why did you come up with this? What's your unique value? And then you go back to yourself and you figure out, all right, so they're doing that thing with the probiotics. What is it that I would do?
Mhm.
And then, I mean, you don't have to think very hard about it. It just needs to be one minimum value proposition. Once you got that, you're already golden, right? Connect that with your story, connect that with your brand, and you're golden right there. But don't think of all these other companies as being your competition and they're like, your enemies. That's the wrong thinking because that is something you want to thrive together. That's
Mhm.
what competition really means. If you look at the Latin root of the word, it means
Mhm.
thriving together. It does not mean thriving against each other.
Well, and there's billions and billions and billions of potential clients on this earth. There's
Mhm.
no way that any of us could ever serve all of them, so there's no lack of market. I mean, even in a saturated market, there's no lack of potential clients or potential customers. Um, you talk about, your students bringing value and the clients that you're working with bringing value, and I believe a lot in divine design. How do you help your clients or your students really focus on what they were meant to bring to this planet?
Beautiful question. Beautiful question. I always think that when you look at a company and a brand, and a lot of my clients come to me as well, and sometimes I even say, don't even tell me what you do. I just want to look at your website, or I want to look at your branding design, or I want to look at a mock-up of your product. And I just look at it and they wait and I just look at it and then I'm saying, all right, so that's my third thing that I always share with my clients. I say it's convince or confuse. And unfortunately, very frequently I'm confused. So to me, it all comes back to, does the mock-up, the packaging, the message resonate with what you're really trying to get across? And most of the time it's just not, right? So it could be like this calming product and it's packaged in bright red. It's like, sorry, I don't associate red with calming. I just don't, you know. It's like simple stuff. It's like
Oh
red,
yeah.
red is energy. Sorry,
Right.
purple,
Yeah.
purple. Yeah, you got to go purple. And then it's like small things, and they're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. It's like, well, yeah, that's why we are working on this, right? But right now, you're confusing me. You're not convincing me. So you have to think a little bit at the end of the day, and that might, tie in with your divine design. What is it really that you and your product or your service really stand for? Because it all has to align. It's like a beautiful circle. Like it all has to go together. Everything is like leading to the next thing and leading to the next thing. And at the end of the day, you really want that it's like cohesive, your brand, that it's really convincing me that this is what they stand for.
Mhm. And that's what people want to hear. They want to hear the story behind it. They want to know what brought you to that place. And if you can talk about your product or your company or your nonprofit, like it sets your soul on fire every day and you're so excited, then that energy comes out in your marketing, in your branding, in your keynote, all of it. Um, what is the most exciting part of marketing or part of your teaching that you make sure people are aware of?
I think the most exciting thing are trends change so fast, right? That before you know it, there's something else there.
Mhm.
So if you feel like you're stuck, I say just go to a store, just walk down the aisles and just
Mhm.
look because we don't just see like the same old craft food Oreos on the shelf. There's other things right and left on the Oreos. So just open your eyes and look, or like go to the dairy aisle because you might think milk is like old fashioned. Well, just look what else is there. And I
Mhm.
think that's really what the magic is, that we feel we sometimes are stuck and we need to research the internet, and like my students are like, well, let me Google this. No, 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 we're not going to Google this right now. We're
Mhm.
actually going to go into the real world. We're going to go to a store. We're going to be at the place of purchase. If you're a service provider, maybe you go to some networking opportunity where other service providers are hanging out and ask them, so what are some trends that you have been seeing in your industry, in your profession? Go to a conference, right? And listen to what the new trends are, what the new research shows. And I think that by putting yourself out there, I actually call it with my clients, I call it get out of the building. You have to
Mhm.
get out of the building. And I think that is really the exciting thing in marketing and entrepreneurship, that things change so fast that if
Mhm.
you feel you're stuck, well, then just look a little bit ahead, and maybe there is a trend that's coming up that you could jump on, and that your stuckness will actually transitions into a movement just by putting your mindset into a different focus.
Well, and I love that you're getting your students out there too, because I think that that also gives them a place of figuring out who their client is.
Mhm.
Are they going to be selling to Walmart or Target or like Trader Joe's or Whole Foods? Is it going to be a specialty grocery store or a specialty spa or I don't even know. I mean, clearly that's
Mhm.
not my area of expertise, but I think so often we miss that piece. And I
Mhm.
found myself in the past pulling back and not wanting to network and not wanting to get to know people. But as soon as you step out of that level of fear, you get real answers. You get real feedback that you never would have gotten otherwise.
Completely. And I'm a firm believer that don't ever underestimate the power of a conversation, even if it's with a barista at a coffee shop. Yeah, just basically share your message, share what you're maybe stuck with, you're struggling with, share what your goals are, and see what people say. Because it's most surprising the insight that they provide, no matter where they come from. And just by formulating that thought and actually using words and to express it, you're already becoming a better person in figuring out yourself what you really want to do. So it's really the verbalizing of your goals that will eventually maybe lead to an elevator pitch, that will lead to an investor presentation, all that. But you have to get started somewhere. Like if I were to tell you, let's film an elevator pitch later today, you'll be like, no way, I'm not ready. But if I say, well, go to a coffee shop and tell somebody in 5 seconds what you're doing, well, you can do that, right? So that's how we get started. You just have to, and I call it petite practice. You just have to start small, get out, share that with somebody. If you see that, what I call in entrepreneurship, the pupils of your consumers dilate, right? People are like, oh my gosh, that sounds so amazing. You know you're onto something.
Love that so much. And it's true
Mhm.
because you have to be able to tell people what you do or they immediately lose confidence in you. So the more often you can talk about it and get super clear in very few words. Oh, I love that. Well, and I'm just sitting here thinking about, how afraid a lot of my clients have been and me myself to get out there and do those things. And so we tend to procrastinate or fill our schedule with things that are not helpful. How do you help your clients move through that fear of being visible or that fear of failing?
Well, like, I mean, I sometimes, quite honestly, just invite guest speakers that
Mhm.
come in to Zoom because it is intimidating to put yourself out there. So sometimes I just invite somebody in. I mean, that's the beauty of Zoom, right? I'm like, oh, look, we have a guest today. And the guest is going to share a little bit, and then you can connect with the guest afterwards. So that's beautiful because it's easy and you don't even have to leave your house for that, right? That's the number one way of how I can do this.
Mhm.
Then the other thing is we actually have to set some accountability. So let's say I have that guest on Zoom in my one-on-one coaching. And then after a week, when I meet again with my client, I might ask, "But did you follow up with that speaker that we had the other day?"
Mhm.
And many times it's like, oh no, I haven't gotten the chance to do that yet. Then I'm like, well, okay, so here we are, mid of April. Let's put this on the calendar that by May 2nd, we followed up with that speaker, because remember that speaker said that they had some connections for you. And let's not do that in August. Let's actually get this done in April. Okay. And then it's like, well, I mean, not that hard. You can even use ChatGPT to write you email. Like, oh man, I man, it's not like we're like thinking about a marriage proposal right here. So you just need to essentially think a little bit about the deadline, the accountability, and following up. So I always say the beauty is in the follow up, right? Meet somebody, put that in your notes app, put a reminder on your calendar app, tell somebody else you're going to do it so you have accountability there. Maybe even set yourself like a deadline on your calendar. By that day, you have to follow up. And all that is essentially free. So right now we didn't really spend any money on that. And that's really when I see it. So that next meeting with that guest speaker that came to my membership might be, in person or might be via Zoom or could be on the phone. But at the same time, it's still a second meeting that happened that might make things move for your business or for your service or whatever you're working on.
Mhm. Well, and everyone who I've met, you included, so many people want to help you.
Mhm.
When I launched out into the entrepreneurial world, I was absolutely clueless. But the moment that you make that decision and you start those follow-ups, because let's be honest, if you ignore the reminder and the calendar notification and the note in your phone, like you are working really hard to not follow through. But the moment that you do, it's so much easier. And the amount of people who flood in and want to give advice or assist or, oh, I know someone who could help you. I mean, it has been absolutely amazing to see over the last several years. And I think all of that is just coming from fear. So as soon as you take that first step, it gets so much easier.
Yeah, fear really just stands for first attempt in learning, right? FAIL. So and quite honestly, even if you reach out to somebody, let's say there was a guest speaker in my one-on-one coaching and I connected that guest speaker with a client. And then I'm like, all right, so let's make the magic happen. The two of you connect, da, 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 da. And then maybe my client comes back to me and say, well, I asked that guest speaker to maybe review my proposal or to be a guest on my podcast or to review a book chapter, whatever they're working on. And that person said no. And now what? And I'm like, so it's a no. I mean, it's a valid answer. That person didn't want to do it, right? That just means next opportunity. And oh, we're just moving on with our life. It's not a personal rejection. Again, we are not doing life changing decisions. We are just building a business. It's all right. We are moving on. Next opportunity. There will be somebody else that will want to do it. That person was maybe just not the right person to begin with. So let's just move on. And I think that fear of that no, right? You just have to really by putting yourself out there, you're going to get no's.
Mhm.
And that's okay because if you don't apply for it, you're not going to get no's and you're not going to get yeses because there
Right.
will be yeses, but there might be 1,000 no's before you hear one yes, and that's okay. Lots of these companies listen to thousands of no's before they ever got a yes, and now they are multi-billion companies. But
Oh,
that's
yeah.
how you have to think about this, right?
Yes. Well, and you you mentioned next opportunity, and I just absolutely love that. But I think too, where we so often can personalize it and think that it's an attack on our own expertise or our product or our selling, it may be that that person has said yes too many times. So the
Mhm.
moment that we can take our own personal rejection out of it and say, okay, this is not about me. They weren't able to do it now. Like you said, move on. It's really powerful because then you don't get in that ruminating space of self-doubt and not being able to move forward. Now, you talk about healthy habits on your podcast. What are some of the self-care things that you ensure that you do yourself or that you talk about for your clients and your students?
Beautiful question. Beautiful question. It's actually one of my most downloaded podcasts, How to Create a Habit. And I get a lot of feedback about it too. So I think that's in reality really the Petite practice and that trademark coaching system that I use with my clients. In order for me to stay healthy and to start a habit, I just have to start small. And you might have noticed that, like I have some water next to my desk, right? So frequently, I work with clients. I'm like, well, I want to get healthy, and so I want to do all these things. I want to work out every day, and blah blah blah. It's like, whoa, whoa! It's like really going to change your life here, right? Unfortunately, that's not how it's going to work. It's not going to stick because it's going to be so big and overwhelming that you essentially feel like somebody, shoved you into a pool of cold water. And that is just like a shock. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't shock your system by thinking you can just flip the switch and change your lifestyle habits from one day to the next. So if you want to drink more, how about instead of every time when you want to drink something, getting up into the kitchen and getting it, you actually have your beverage right there where you are, right? So have your beverage where you are. And so see, this is like a cute little cake mug here. Maybe have a mug that actually brings joy. So it's not just like this random thing, but it's also something that you enjoy using. So this is a very small thing, a very petite thing, but yet I'm practicing to hydrate more to change my lifestyle. So in my personal life, because I speak a lot and I move a lot, I'm like always having some beverage close by because at the end of the day, the voice is my number one source, right, of my income. If I
Right.
can't teach or I can't coach, this is looking pretty tough for me, right? So I have to take care of myself. Honestly, it would be, right? So I have to take care of myself. I drink a lot. I make sure that my voice gets rest,
Mhm.
right? Frequently, my students notice I have like a little petite scarf around my neck to keep my throat warm. And all these things are small, right? I'm not like speaking like I have this voice coach that I pay like $1,000 per week or something to. Nothing drastic. It's just all small things, but they all lead to me staying healthy and also really owning my skills in a way that I can perform the way that I perform with my teaching and with my coaching.
Well, and you lifted up your cup and it just made me think of Stanley because and I don't know whether it's a Stanley or not, but it just made me chuckle because Stanley used to be like hunting cups. And this whole conversation's been about marketing and branding and serving the population that you want to serve. And then they came out with all the new colors and look where they are now because women want more than army green and black and silver.
Exactly. Yeah. There's actually a beautiful story. Last year on my birthday, one of my students came to my birthday party and she bought me one of those mugs in like the most beautiful rainbow colors. And she said, "Oh, yeah, I figured you could never have enough water bottles." And I said, "Absolutely love it." And she said, "Well, and then when I went to the store, when I saw it, I thought about you." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like so much more than a cup. It's actually like a statement of love and a compliment to
Yes.
me because it's
Yes.
like you remind me of the rainbow." And I like that. Thank you so much. That's beautiful. So I think that, if you get something that does that for you, like a little spark of joy, like whether it has sparkles or it's pink, or maybe you love the army green because it
Right.
reminds you of some time you spend with your husband. I mean, who knows what, right? Get something
Right.
that rocks your boat and customize it, personalize it, because it's really important. All these small things, those petite practices are so important because it makes you you. And
Yes.
that's really, again, your unique value. It's you don't have to do what I do because you do you, boo. And so just do it in a way that it feels it works for you. I mean, it's just like because I teach fitness classes. I always tell my students there are many opportunities in my class to do when I call here is an alternative to this move. And
Right.
I'm not just saying this because I'm just like thinking that because I'm a good instructor that I want to be saying this and it's like this empty sentence. There is a lot of meaning behind it. An opportunity for you to modify means that you're aware about what your body needs, what you need to make this the best class possible for you. So we
Yeah.
don't all do the exact same move. We all do it in a way that it works for you. So if somebody
And
wants to do a forearm plank, do a forearm plank. Somebody wants a high plank, do a high plank. If somebody wants to just do a swan to stretch their lower back, fantastic. That's how it works.
Mhm. And it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Your people are out there. The people who need your services, the people who need my services, who need our podcasts, they're out there for all of us. And I love that you talked about the true definition of competition, because there's so many opportunities to collaborate and network and move forward together, and we'll go so much farther more successfully with help from others.
Yeah, and I think that is really when we feel we're getting more into the thinking of, abundance. There's this abundance of resources out there, and it's not we are in some scarcity economy.
Right,
Don't let go of that scarcity thinking and more think like there's enough for us to go around. Energy is everywhere. You just have to
right.
tap into this, and then you're really going to see a big transformation happen.
Absolutely. I have loved our conversation today. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to make sure our audience knows about?
Yeah, I would love for the audience that tune into my podcast. It's small, right? And of course, check out my books. And the reason why I'm bringing up those two pieces is because sometimes people ask me, like, who's really your client? What are the things they're struggling with? And I would say that's the two things: publishing a podcast or publishing a book are frequently what I see in my clients, that they want to leave a legacy and they just don't know how,
Right.
right? They are like, well, I want to open a store, but then again, I don't really want to open a store. And then I just don't know what I can create. I'm not artistic or anything. And I'm like, well, you don't need to necessarily do something physical. I mean, you could do like a digital product, like a podcast where people hear your voice.
Mhm.
And I cannot emphasize how this is something that will live for generations,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Leaving your legacy as a book or as a podcast is absolutely beautiful, and it's something that generations will thank you for. So when I work with my clients, I kind of like take the focus out of I want to make money, but I don't know how,
Mhm.
to let's maybe think a little bit about your children or your family or your friends. They value for who you are. Let's think about what do they really like about you that you could share, and like maybe some skills that come easy to you. And you can just talk about that on your podcast, and you don't even have to have fancy equipment. So I think that's important for the audience to understand that you don't need to create or rent a store somewhere to generate income. It's sometimes already in you, and you just need to grab your phone and start recording. And it's so easy to start a business. The main thing is just you have to keep it up, right? But that's where the coaching comes in, to keep it up. But in
Yeah.
general, just get started. You already have what it takes. Your value is already there. You just have to kind of discover a little bit more.
Well, and I love that you mentioned that your value is already there, because it opens the door for our audience to recognize the value that they have in themselves. They do have expertise to offer, and it doesn't have to stay within the box that maybe they're keeping themselves in right now.
Beautiful.
So,
Yeah.
how can my listeners get in touch with you? Because I know that they're going to want to follow you and find out about your book and everything.
Yeah. So my podcast is called Happy Healthy Hustle, available wherever you want to tune in for your favorite podcasts. Then my books are all on Amazon. I have three books. The How to Master Your Goals book is one of the number one bestsellers on Amazon. And then my recent book, Discover Your Superpower, might help you maybe unravel some of that unique value that you have to share with the world. And then, of course, my website, Dr. Christiane, also shows you how to work with me one on one and maybe elevate your game to discover your legacy, what you can leave behind.
Well, and I will make sure that all of this is in the show notes so that people can find the links and find you and find your books. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to connect more.
Absolutely. As we close out today's episode, I want to leave you with this. Your next level is already within you. If you're feeling that pull for more clarity, more alignment, and more courage to step fully into who you're meant to be, this is your invitation to take the next step. Whether you're an entrepreneur ready to scale or a woman standing at the edge of something bigger, the path forward starts with trusting your desires, owning your worth, and leading with your inner knowing. This is exactly what I offer: private VIP coaching, and where I guide women inside the 10K Club and 50K Club through consulting with She Sells and Superhuman Selling to help you gain clarity, step into aligned action, and build a life and business that reflects your highest vision. If you're ready to explore what's next, let's have a conversation. Book a free call now at www.corywinn.com/free call. I can't wait to connect with you. Talk soon.